Hello, my name is Dmitry, and I will talk about Reskit, which we developed for creating pipelines for machine learning. So here is outline. I will tell you what is Reskit and about its origins, and I will give you a very simple example how it works. I will shortly describe main features, and then I will tell you, it will be maybe the biggest part of my presentation, I will tell you how we used it to solve our machine learning problems. I work in neuroscience. Then I will talk about limitations. There are a lot of them. And also I will talk about possible areas of further development, and then I will conclude. So what is a Reskit? We developed Reskit, as I said, for creating and curating machine learning pipelines. And the main features is data caching. It means that, and I will talk about it in details later, but it means that if you have some kind of similar steps for pipelines, you don't need to recalculate some data transformations. It's compatible with scikit-learn objects, and in fact it was heavily inspired by them. And it also has some optimization constraints, such as forbidden combinations, and I will talk about it later as well. And also it represents results in a convenient for analysis way. And here are the links to the library and to the documentation as well. So Reskit was heavily inspired by scikit-learn pipelines. I mean, scikit-learn is amazing, but for me the most amazing part of scikit-learn is that you are able to chain data transformers into pipelines, and it simplifies experiments a lot. So, but the problem was, at least for me, that you still need to create and manage. If you want to perform a lot of experiments, you need to create and manage a lot of pipelines, and it can be kind of cumbersome. So we decided to make some kind of tool for our needs that allows you to simplify this process. So to use it, you will need scikit-learn-like data transformation objects. It means that objects which have fit, transform, and fit transform method. And also it works with scikit-learn-like predictive models. I mean, models which has also fit method, predict problem method. It depends on metric you use. And it also relies on pandas because it represents the results in pandas data frame. And also optionally, but it's very specific and very specific for what I do. And I do neuroscience and study networks, brain networks. It also relies on network X and iGraph package, but specifically for like machine learning on networks purposes. So let's define a toy problem to illustrate how how Reskit works. So imagine you want to perform the following steps. You have 3 steps. First step is like data scaling. Second step is dimensionality reduction, and the third step, you want to fit predictive model on transformed data. And you have several choices for each step. For example, for scaling, you're doing standard scaling and min-max scaling. For dimensionality reduction, you are doing PCA and kernel PCA, and for predictive modeling, you are doing like logistic regression and decision trees. And also, and this is a toy example, but you don't want to perform some steps with others. For example, in this case, and this toy example, you don't want to run min-max scaling with the kernel PCA. So using Reskit, you can specify names of the steps and possible names of the steps, possible objects. And so, for example, in this case, we have, let me show you. So in this case, we have scalars. standard and min-max scaling, we have dimensionality reduction choice, and they define as a list of tuples. We have classifiers. So here we define steps. So here is we have a scalar step, dimensionality reduction step, and classifier step. Also, what we want to do, we want to transform data, perform some kind of grid search on this data, choose the best model according to cross-validation scheme, and then test best model on evaluation set. So here is how we define it. So once we define it, we have an object in Reskit which is called pipeliner, which is somehow generalization of scikit-learn pipelines. So it has a steps parameter, grid CV parameter, which is a grid search object, eval CV parameter, which is evaluation object, and also it has parameter grid for grid search, and it has banned combinations. It's forbidden combinations. So what it does, it makes a Cartesian product of all possible steps. You see, this is experiment plan table. So we have, and it makes Cartesian product of all possible combinations, and then excludes forbidden combinations to narrow, because some combinations of steps, they doesn't make sense. For example, you don't want, at least in theory, you don't want to scale your data for decision trees. It's not this example, but so we see, for example, that without forbidden combinations, we would have 12 rows in this table, and here we have 6. We have 6. So what Reskit does for each row in the table represents an experiment, and it changes, and each k in each column represents an object. So it changes the pipeline using these objects and performs experiments and outputs the results of these experiments. Here, how it works. So we see it's essentially the same table, but we see that a pipeliner added, there is a method to get results, and we provide data, and we provide a scoring function. In this case, it's area under a curve. And it's essentially just goes line by line and fills the table and outputs the results of experiments. So it, in this case, and I will talk about it in limitations, and it produces grid search best model, area under a curve mean, STD, and also it produces results on evaluation set, mean and STD, and also scores on each fold of evaluation set, just if you want to look at them. So you have, and it's a convenient form for meta-analysis. So, I mean, to see if you want to find best combination of data transformations, predictive models, or something else, depending on your needs. So what are the features? So these two examples shows that Reskit allows you to automatically construct pipelines if you provide keys of the pipelines, and if you have fixed number of steps and have variations, different variations for each step, it allows you to construct these pipelines as I just showed. Also, it has feature of step caching. So, for example, if you have computationally intensive data transformations, you can provide caching steps, and so it will group by your experiments by these steps and calculate them once and not each time for each experiment. Also, as I showed, it has forbidden combinations, which allows you to not to do unnecessary calculations. Also, you can use multiple performance metrics. In my example, I provided area under a curve, but I could add to this list accuracy, precision, recall, or something else which is scikit-learn compatible. Also, we created that transformer class, which allows you to create your own data transformers. It's pretty simple, but it's just simple or a wrapper of transformer mixing, and you need just to provide function to which you feed data, and it outputs transformed data, and you can chain these data transformers in pipelines. And also it provides, and it's kind of specific, but also, but it's that's why we developed it at some point, tools on machine learning on graphs. So we have some. I will talk about it when I will talk about our problems. So applications. Why we developed it and how we used it. So we work with brain networks. Brain networks are essentially undirected graphs, which are represented by adjacency matrices. So one subject can have several networks. For example, it can be different measurements in time, for example, baseline visit, follow-up visit, and so on and so on. And also, there are a lot of different algorithms of producing these networks, which slightly differ. So there are two problems which we were solving. First problem was classifying brain networks by diagnostic groups. For example, you essentially have a set of matrices, and you want to do, for example, binary classification on them, either individual with this network is healthy or not. And the second problem is compare to different algorithms of building these networks and we did it using intra-class correlation coefficient, pairwise classification, gender classification, and it required a lot of experiments. And Reskit helped us to do it more technologically. So, and I will. So, first problem is how it's like problem setup, how machine learning on network works. So we have some. And in this case, I won't talk about this much, but we have some algorithms that produce brain network. So then, because most algorithms, machine learning algorithms, they don't work on matrices, on adjacency matrices, and they work on vector spaces. So we need to produce some kind of network features, and there are a lot of them. It's different centralities. It can be some kind of shortest path lengths, or there are a lot of them. And then on these features, we want to perform classification. And the other thing that samples are not very big, so we can perform a lot of experiments, but possibly we can overfit. So to classify brain networks, essentially you need to perform the following steps. So you need to load adjacency matrices according to some classification problem. For example, you may have, for example, your basic data and some kind of baseline data, and you want to compare results on baseline data, for example, some kind of tricky metrics or maybe simple metrics, and your transformations. You want to normalize matrices, it's just subject domain specifics. So you want to normalize matrices another way. You want to construct network features. Maybe you want to scale or not to scale features, and then you want to fit predictive models and do grid search and estimate the best model, and then output results, and essentially find the best combinations, best combination of this transformation, best transformation and best predictive model. So So how it looked in Reskit, so how we define this transformation. So here we in this case, and I'm talking about particular case, we defined some kind of data loaders. So and it was developed in older version Reskit. We slightly refactored it, but essentially the idea is the same. So you define data loaders, you define waiters, so it's the second step. You define normalizers. Essentially it's like two combinations of normalizers. I mean, it could be done in one step. We did it just because it was easier for us to analyze it. So we did featureizers. This is the thing that takes in the matrix and produces the vector of features on which we perform machine learning. So we had a feature selector. In this case, it was one feature selector variance threshold. Just we removed zero features, and then we performed scaling of the data. And here you can understand why forbidden combinations are important, because we have min-max scaling for linear models, and we have identity transformation it means we don't want to scale a data set for decision trees. We used random forest and gradient boosted decision trees, and we didn't want to scale data for them. So that's why we needed to avoid unnecessary calculations. We removed combination of min-max scaling and decision tree based classifiers. So we had and what Reskit did, he just did the Cartesian product of all this stuff and just removed forbidden combinations and produced the results. And that's how the results essentially look. At first, I mean, at first it may seem like maybe a too overly complicated table, but it's not. So here you see that it shows you data source, the key of data source. Here it shows you type of normalization. It's the top of the table, so that's why some columns can be constant. But essentially, it's quite interpretable. It's like what was the first step, what was the second step, what was the third step, what was the fourth step, so on. And here are results. It's not the full results because the table is pretty wide, but it's really handy to analyze. And really, and Pandas provides a lot of tools to analyze data, group data, build graphs on data, and so on and so on. So. Just a second. Another application we did, and it was a much more challenging problem in terms of number of calculations. It was to compare different brain network constructing algorithms. And we used for this a thing we call pairwise classification. So basically we try to discriminate pairs of connectomes either belonging to the same individuals or not. Also, we on the same data sets and same for each preprocessing pipeline or processing pipeline. We calculated gender classification and intra-class correlation coefficient, which is kind of standard thing to calculate on test-retest data. So important thing that we didn't, some of the data preprocessings we were done without Reskit due to some of the neuroimaging preprocessing couldn't be put in, at least for now, in scikit-learn like pipelines, although we are working on it. So what exactly was the problem? So we had different subjects, and for each subject we had different images. In our case, it was test-retest data. So it was images taken with a short difference of time. And for each image, we had different. For different images, we had different brain networks. And for each brain network and selected feature mapping, we had different features. So our problem was like construct possible pairs, perform machine learning on them, and we had a lot of we had a lot of, and this is problem setting of pairwise classification. For understanding how Reskit works, it's not important, but what important is that we had some kind of metadata which constructed, which included pairs of subjects, and we had a target is 1. Brain networks belong to the same individual. As 0, they belong to the different individuals. But the main problem was that the number of experiments was really huge. It's like we had 35 connectome building methods, and for each method you have 7 different scales, like how you discretize your network. We had 4 normalizations and 9 types of connectome features. We had 3 different data sets, and the overall combinations was really huge. And to do it manually, it would be really, really tiresome. So, and for each combination, we needed to do 3 problems: pairwise classification, gender classification, and ICC calculation. So, and this is like, it's just showing, it's like visualization of the possible combinations from the paper, but it just shows, it's another illustration of how many possible, how many possible steps there were. So how it did look on the Reskit. We did not this problem. We didn't calculate it on one machine. We used a computing cluster. So we wrote a script which downloaded the data. But on specific set of connectomes, we performed normalizations. We performed featurizing, so making features from matrices, and also we constructed pairwise features. And here how the results looked like. So, so here is first column represents the data set, and I would love this to be like additional 5 or 6 columns, and and which were implemented in a scikit-learn fashion, because it's really handy, but we just don't have these tools yet. But here we have different features. We have different pairwise features and different classifiers and Hura metrics. And as I said, once we were done writing objects for transformations, it can be easily put in Reskit, and calculations are pretty straightforward, and it's really easy to analyze. So yeah, and what are the limitations? I mean, there are a lot of limitations, to be honest, because we developed Reskit for our particular purposes, and so some things we are fixing, for example, an ability to provide custom grid search object, an ability to perform nested cross-validation, an ability to calculate statistics on data. Because, for example, when we are calculating ICC, we just forked our Reskit and just rewrote the code to calculate some kind of statistics, and it's not a good way to do it. So it's non-parallelizable, although experiment plan allows you, at least in theory, to parallelize it pretty neat. You can just split your pandas table and calculate, perform parts of table on different nodes of the cluster, for example. So we have very particular experiment scheme, very narrow. So we have grid search, we have eval CV, but it would be nice to have some kind of more flexible experimentation scheme. You can save plan of experiments, but you can't save all the objects, and it would be nice, for example, to provide some people not only pandas table, but all the objects, so they can perform stuff. Right now, you can just provide a script or something like this. So, and you can't extend or combine different experiment plans, which can be handy as well. So further development, there are 2 of us who work on Reskit, and I mean, I see a lot of areas of exploration and development. For example, as I said, it would be nice to have ability customize experimentation. It can be you can realize you can do it in form of like function from pipeline which outputs you dictionary of some kind of metrics, and then you put it into pandas data frame. Distributed computing for calculations on clusters, ability to calculate different quality metrics, because right now Reskit optimizes, solves optimization problem for each of the provided metrics. So if you provide accuracy and grid area under a curve, it will optimize by grid search or by area under a curve. It will optimize by accuracy and show you the best results. But maybe you want to optimize by area under a curve and report, for example, recall, precision, and the area under a curve. So it would be nice to have collection of that transformers for various purposes. I mean, there are a lot of things to improve. So conclusion, when Reskit may be useful for you, you have a lot of transformations on your data, and a lot of feature generation steps, and want to compare them using one model, for example. Another, you want to compare different models and also different sets of features, and you want experiment results in convenient form for analysis. In our case, it's pandas data frame. So here are acknowledgements of organizations that supported us. I mean, it was a kind of side project for us, but people supported us nonetheless. And here is my contacts, and if you have questions and you have suggestions and you want to contribute, because as I said, we have a lot of other things to do, and any help can be appreciated. So questions.